And then you hit record on
Mitchell?
We're rocking.
Is that you over there? Are we recording?
We're
Mitch, we
live.
got dead air time.
We're live.
Mitch,
No dead air time. We got to keep the marks entertained.
come on, get the mic.
Just keep talking. Just keep talking, even if it's nonsense. Just
what did I
talk.
tell you about this group, the Marts?
We got to keep them entertained.
They're down home,
Down home folk.
wholesome folks.
Yeah.
So I can't be having dead air over here.
No dead air.
So you just need to keep it entertained for about 2 seconds.
So you're going to light the sage. We're going to take away any negative energy that may be in the room with the sage.
Did you play today in the baseball game?
I did. I pitched 1 inning.
Did you pitch well? Positive energy?
Sure, yeah. It depends on what your definition of well is. I'm not going to go through what happened, but I mean, I got the first 2 guys out, then our shortstop booted a ball.
I'm good. I'm good with that now.
Yeah, there we go. Had 1K.
I'm very good with not knowing.
Yeah, you don't need to know about the baseball I'm playing.
So, okay. You ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready to rock.
All right, let's go 3 questions.
3 questions.
3 questions. Great to have you.
So we got 5 minutes each.
Yeah. We'll keep. Yeah. We'll
do you
that.
introduce me, or do I introduce myself, or do people already know who I am?
Do you want an intro?
No.
Bauer Hour, Mitch of the Bauer Hour, and yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So the first question is, what is education? What is education? Do you want to go first on all these, since I'll read them?
What is education?
Yes, that's the question.
School is my first thought.
Okay.
I think education is probably any time you put yourself in a position to be a student. So you can get educated in essentially any conversation and any scenario that you're in. And I think that's probably one thing that you and I both do. I mean, go back to talking about our interest in people and just being a student of each and every person that we interact with. It's kind of my thoughts on education. I think there are a lot of different forms of education. I think that our current school system has a lot of positives to it, and I also think that it has a lot of negatives. I mean, I don't know. I'd probably like to hear your thoughts on what you think education is, because I think you hear the word education and you immediately think school. But I know Mart's a little deeper than that, and I know Mart's people want to hear how deep Mart thinks about this, because they're wholesome folk.
Good for you. I like saying the Marts.
I like Mart's. Mart's plays.
Mart's plays really well. I was talking to a college roommate, shout out Mike Nixon, the other day, because I've been noticing it's been egotistically, my ego's been getting good taps because I'm getting this sauna rolling with the coffee shop. And shout out Tim Dixon, called me a Renaissance man today. If you're listening, Timmy, I literally came home, told my wife, Tim Dixon called me the Renaissance man today. And that's just a good ego pump.
That is a great ego pump.
It is good. And what's even beautiful about the egos, I had to look up what Renaissance man meant.
I was going to ask, but I didn't want the Marts to not be entertained.
Hey, that's one of the things we got to be with these Marts. We got to be honest. All right, Marts? So I had to look up Renaissance man. I was just so bought into how cool it sounded at the time.
Okay.
It is cool. It is a cool thing, though. It's having skills in many things. Was like the Webster dictionary, but there's a lot.
Okay.
And we kind of moved on after we got a little bit of the early definitions, but
sure. So what is education?
So education is well, words are words. Words are used to allow us to agree on things, but words are illusion. Just like us making sound to package words and then to interpret it differently, but then we agree on things we don't really even interpret or understand accurately. And that's just conformity 101. So I think the conformist mentality behind education, the actuality of education in terms of definitive words, how we communicate, is just the way in which we've structured society to educate ourselves. But that, I used the word actuality earlier. I would take away that word and I'd use actuality here. In actuality, we know that you don't get your education at school, and I don't think you would find a large disagreement with that. It just has to reach more of an abstract philosophical ideology to understand that we don't really get educated by the curriculum of education from a surface standpoint.
You get educated when you're interested in the topic.
Yeah, and that's why education, using words definitively through materialistic words, education is K through 12, and there's probably a definition for it on Webster, and it probably talks about all the subjects that you learn in order to move on after life. Now, I do talk about education a lot, and I have previously. I don't talk about it consistently, but I talk a lot about the Prussian Empire that came out of Germany in the 16th. What is it? The 16th. I think it started in the 16th century. I think it got rolling in the 1600s. I think it got established in the 1700s, so the 18th century. So there's a couple centuries there, so take it or leave it how you want. But
the Marts are disappointed.
I'm pretty confident. Marts, let's get you on there. But I'm pretty confident it was like the 18th century is when this thing started really coming to life. And to my understanding of it is that they discovered that the ages of 7 to 14 is when they could really mold a mind. And when you really study what the molding of the mind was used for, it was used for assembly line manufacturing and machine work, which makes tons of sense because that's when the industrial age was really booming in Europe. And then the other side of it was to create militant type obedience, creating strong militaries. Obviously, Germany had some pretty strong militaries and had a lot to do with the industrial age. And then again, how I understand it is Rockefeller went over there and really established an understanding of how to scale work in America based off of that same educational system, brought it over here. And this is where I could get a little hazy, but I'm also under the understanding that that's why money was so sunk into the public school system. And so that's what makes a ton of sense in terms of why we would have public school and public education or education. And this is just, now I'm going off of my thoughts based off of what I just said. So my thoughts based off of how I hear what I just said off of study is that it makes sense that people with money would go to a private school and design the curriculums that get those people to certain access points in their careers and have certain pockets of a network or a Rolodex of people that are in the same bucket. Like, that makes a ton of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then a public school makes a ton of sense because if billionaire people who are running the country or governments can funnel public education, and now people can go to public school and get a free lunch and be there for 8 hours of the day, well, then it allows access to work for families or parents and these sort of things. And it allows free daycare. It allows a ton of benefits. And I'm not arguing for or against either of these. I would just say that when we hear what is education, we have a hard time not seeing behind these like objective things that I'm talking about right now, because that's how the fabric of education has been placed into culture. Now, if we talk about the actuality, like I already said, I believe, of education, that is what you're interested in. That's a lifelong process of learning. That's curiosity. That's sinking into a subject and going all in. That's asking questions. That's peeling into things. And so that's what I would say is education from a vertical standpoint, meaning the reasoning in the depths. But from a horizontal standpoint, education is what I kind of already said. It's a curriculum-based structure that is used to bring us into society after the educational process is over in a molded way in which continues to uphold the hierarchies and structure of society.
I'm glad that I went first and took the first stab at that, because there's no way I'm following up that answer. Unless I'm going to follow it up with more questions.
Yeah. Well, what do you have a question on?
Nothing. I think that you just gave a pretty deep, hardcore definition on your thoughts on what education is.
Yeah. I want to emphasize my thoughts there, because
that's what these are. This is what a podcast is. It's all your thoughts.
Do your own vibe and go down your own bag on what you think education is.
I mean, we gave like pretty different answers there.
Mm-hmm.
Like my answer was a lot different than what your answer was. Not saying that my answer was right, your answer was wrong, or your answer was right, mine was wrong. But I mean, that's the beauty of relationships, is that you don't have to think the same, and we're educating each other sitting here. How about that?
That's funny, because then that would bring a similarity to our answers, because I talked about how we can't interpret the things the same before I get started. And that would be to what you just said about why we're educating each other. Educating each other is really interesting too. I'll throw this last one into the hat before we bounce. But, I've really played with the concept of information doesn't move the needle without emotion. So behavioral change doesn't occur on information alone. It needs emotion. And I heard that somewhere in a different form. I wish it was coming to me so I could give a little bit more context to it. But and I'll say it again, maybe in a few different words, but the way behavioral changes occur cannot happen off information alone. There has to be emotion evolved. And I think that's why you see large scale disease and obesity and heart disease and cancers. And in America, this is where I'm from this part of the world, with the most information we've ever had in the history of our species. So if we have all the info to be healthy, clearly that doesn't move the needle in behavioral change. So now you'd need some emotion, which is why, once again, if I take that concept and I plug that into education in the material sense, that horizontal, if you will, that's why I don't think we actually learn the most from our educational experiences. And I'm going to generalize this subjective opinion, but that's also why I feel like most of the people I've encountered in my life would also say that they don't really remember what they went through in school, and they don't feel like they learned anything. And then they learned everything outside of that in the quote unquote real world. But that's why I would say that's why that occurs. Because when you get into a curriculum in school and you just sort of check the boxes the whole way up, and as long as you memorize enough stuff and check enough boxes and you get a C, you keep moving along. And as long as you move along, you're good. And I think that there's not enough emotion to that, because when you make a bad business decision, or you misplace your market, or you actually are, we'll just go the real one, the realest of all reals, health. When you are not healthy, you dive down the rabbit hole pretty quick if you're serious, especially if it's life-threatening, and you start to educate yourself. And so I think that's a great, again, I wish I remembered where I came across that ideology, but I would say I really like that sentiment and attaching that to the question of what is education, because of what I'm saying. I think that you only have emotion attached to info when you're interested in the information.
That was exactly where my mind was.
Really?
Yeah. The question that continued to pop into my mind was, is education bad if you're not interested in the education? Because to me, it would be useless education if you're not interested, because you're not really taking in any of the information, or you're not retaining any. You might retain some of it, but
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, clearly I would say off the bat, it feels bad and it sounds bad, right? But I don't know if it can be bad because you get so much from education either way. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you get your friends, you get your experiences, you get your memories, and we don't have many other options to get all that in society currently. So, is it bad? I'm a classic case of somebody who uses none of my college degrees professionally. Never have. I don't even sometimes the amount of times I've had to go back and look up what my college degree was when someone asks me is all the time. I don't even really remember what my degrees were in.
Sports psych was our sports management.
Sport. I said sport performance for the
Sport
longest time
performance,
because I didn't
okay.
know if it was sport psych or sport management. But I think it's sport management. And in my undergrad was like sports studies or something. But I wouldn't know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what sports studies is. Like I don't know what that is
Sure.
from a bachelor side, or whatever. But yeah, I think that's what. But I also could say, just the memories and the experiences alone, I have tons of positive memories.
From education. Yeah.
Yeah, just like people I met,
Absolutely.
teachers I had.
There's a lot of good things that come from education.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, you learn to play sports when you're being educated at school. Like, think about recess.
No doubt.
We could go on and on about this topic for a really long time.
I really took the most on that, so I really apologize there.
Don't apologize.
It's
I
a
think
fun
you gave a
topic
good
for me.
answer.
Appreciate
I gave
it.
a minute or two answer, and then you gave the Marts what they came to see.
Well, one love to the Marts.
One love to the Marts.
Okay, do knowledge and understanding make you content and happy as a person?
Do knowledge and understanding make you content as a person?
And happy as a person.
Make you content and happy as a person.
Yeah.
Knowledge and understanding.
Do knowledge and understanding make you content and happy as a person?
So this is a yes or no.
Really?
I mean, that's kind of the question, right? It's a yes or no. Does it make you happy? Does knowledge and understanding make you happy and content? And I would say yes, if your knowledge and understanding the correct fields.
Okay.
So if you're trying to figure out what we're doing here, why we're here, I think you have to build a lot of knowledge into the roots of humanity and how humans were born and how humans got here and what the progression of humans have been like, to really understand. And I think that you get a sense of peace once you have understanding, which is another form of contentment or happiness. I mean, that's why people search.
Do you think there's a difference between knowledge and understanding?
Yes.
That's why that question trips me up. Do knowledge and understanding, I feel like they're different.
They are different. But they have enough similarities where it still plays.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts? What first comes to your mind when that question hits your brain?
I think that I loved your answer to it. I'm going to try to answer it differently. Got a late night here, folks.
You just hit us with a yawn. The Marts don't like when you yawn.
Hey, it's a down home, wholesome folk. You gotta tell them the truth. It's late night. We're freaking gassing with everything we got here right now.
Yeah,
I'm giving you everything I got.
I got 3 kids at home.
Yeah. We're giving you everything we got.
Yeah.
The thing is, I've been getting just, I don't want to use the word harassed because I'm not as up to date with the manual of what you can say in the 21st century right now. So we're not going to use that word. But I'm not going to use abused either. But definitely tormented with when these don't come out on Friday. And it's so funny to me because it's so funny to me, these Marts out there. And the problem is where I really got myself in the gutter was I had acknowledged it in a humorous way the first time I didn't release a Coffee Buzz Friday like a month ago or something. And I had just a few people text me, And some people I hadn't heard from in a long some people I didn't even know. But those are kind of like funny, you know. And those
Yeah.
were nice and kind.
Oh yeah.
And then some people who knew me were not as kind, right? Just chirping me a little bit.
Some good banter back and forth.
Yeah, so then I made some banter about it and like had some fun with it.
Oh yeah.
The issue with me making banter towards the marks, like I said, down home, wholesome, but it ruffled a little bit of feather. So once I acknowledged it publicly, it actually made my matters worse the next time a buzz didn't come out.
Oh
because
no.
it brought in a whole new list of marks.
Oh.
It was like it was almost like I had given the green light.
Now it's just, hey, funny guy.
Yeah,
Hey, funny guy, where's my coffee buzz?
Where's my entertainment?
Yeah, I'm
pal?
buzzing on my coffee.
Yeah.
Now I want to listen to some Mark.
Yeah, so that's always funny. And the funny thing is when you're doing podcasts like this, you know, at the end of the day, you take the job that pays, you know. so everyone's got a price. We've learned that, and that's my first bit of answering this question. What's the one knowledge I've learned in life is that everybody's got a price, and the main aspect of understanding that is that the sooner I can understand the actuality of that, I'm more content and I'm happier because I can realize at the end of the day, everyone's out there just trying to survive.
That has to be one of the greatest come around full circle stories / answer to that question. I was not thinking you were going to bring that back. You completely caught me off guard. I was actually going to interrupt you and be like, do you remember the question?
Right. It's crazy that I have that in my box.
I cannot believe
I do that to Chelsea all the time.
You just wrapped that all in and just hit it.
I had it the whole time.
You had it the whole time. You caught me and all the Marts off guard.
That's what you got to do.
It's incredible. You just keep us on our toes.
This crowd, I'll tell you. These Marts.
Wholesome, down home.
These are some down home, wholesome folks, these Marts. So you got to keep them going.
Mm-hmm.
You got to keep going. The problem with this is that we have, okay, that's a cool question.
Okay.
I'm going to give us two questions. You pick the one you want.
Okay.
So are there limitations on free speech is the first one.
Yes.
That's your answer? You don't want to know?
That's the first thought that I'm having, but yeah, I want to hear the other one.
Okay. There's two more that I'm going to ask you. Does utilizing time properly make our lives meaningful and happy? No, we're Xing that out. Where does the soul live?
Whoa.
No.
Where does the soul?
What about this one? Why do we strive for perfection if it is not attainable? That one might be my play. Okay, those would be our stopping points.
My answer to that.
Which one?
To the why do we strive for perfection?
Oh, is that what we're going with?
Sure. Yeah, we could.
Why do we strive for perfection if it is not attainable?
Because Jesus was perfect, and if you grew up in the church, you grow up learning that you need to be like Jesus. And I think that's a good thing to strive towards perfection. I think that it could be a negative if you take out the biblical sense of it and you're just striving for what you think is perfect or what you think the world thinks is perfect. But when you dig down to the roots of perfection and who Jesus was and what God is, I think that it's good to strive towards that perfect.
Why?
Because that's an example of how we're supposed to live. And none of us are perfect, and none of us will ever attain that.
Sure.
But if you continue to strive to live like Jesus, you're just living a pursuit of continuing to grow as a human.
Yeah.
Where does your mind go?
Well, I was really listening to what you were saying there. I guess if Why do we strive for perfection if it is not attainable?
Because what is perfection, right? Like we
And
can
in that
dissect this
context, you're
question.
using Jesus,
Yes,
and you're saying the point of that is to push us to get better every day towards Jesus.
correct.
And that would make sense if you're ascending to heaven, right? You'd essentially be climbing the stairs to the gates regularly for your entire existence. You'd just be walking up the narrow, and that it says that in the Bible too, right? Those who will go through the gates will go through the narrow path. They're not going to come in a broad aspect. The broad path will not take you to the gates. It will be a very narrow. It doesn't say uphill in that part of the Bible, but it's alluding towards the concept of it will be a very narrow uphill ascension into the heavens.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah,
Well, that's what you were saying.
right. I was saying that if you strive to be perfect in what the Bible says is perfect, that is good. But if you strive to be perfect into what society thinks is perfect, I think you'll find a lot of emptiness.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? We're not for the world, we're of the world.
Boom. We're not for the world, we're of the world. We are the world. God is a celestial being that connects each and every one of us.
I don't know if that's the exact Bible verse, but something along those lines.
Okay. And Jesus was...
Well, it's the same concept of you're not playing in this world. I'm not of the world, I think is what it is.
But Jesus was obviously all God.
I'm not of this world refers to a concept of spiritual transcendence and separation from earthly concerns. So I was close. Not of the world. Is that what I said? Maybe that's what I said. They're not of the world, even as I am not of it.
Is that a Bible verse?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's what you're saying. Living not of this world does not necessarily mean just avoiding sinful things. It also means shining our light and doing things the world is not willing to do. It's basically just not existing in the material world as a truth. You know, it's having in my understanding, it's having a spiritual experience within the ego of your character, mind, body. And your ego, mind, body, it wants to have the experience of your soul. And when it's all said and done, you will go into the soul. But your soul's down here having a human experience through a mind, body, ego, which is of the world. That's the material part of me. I am Harvey James Martin, entrepreneur, author, son, husband, dad in this world. Spiritually, I am none of those. When we get into awareness, we get into consciousness, get into completion. I can't be that. I'm just playing that character because that's what my soul is here to experience. I'm here to experience this character. And so in that sense, I would look at it as Jesus came down as the Son of God with the Spirit of God, the Spirit of perfection in his mind body. You know, you drink the wine of the blood, basically you eat the bread, but the body. So you're having the ego of Jesus, the worldly sense of Jesus. But what was inside Jesus, I mean, that's what he says in can't remember that part in the Gospels, the fourth book of the first four Gospels of the New Testament in John. He said, I am he. In the whole book, obviously, he is God. I am he. And Jesus says that. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about. I've never really packaged that, I guess, out loud until right now. But that's how I would, that's a way in which I would interpret some of the stories for sure.
The fact that you read the Bible in, 2 months?
No, the New Testament.
Okay.
It took me a long time to read the Old Testament.
How long did it take you to read the Old Testament?
I mean, if I really put it together, I probably read the whole thing in maybe under 6 months.
But what I'm getting at is you retained a lot of the information that you read from the Bible. Like the fact that you just ripped off like what the quote and where it was in the Bible is, I mean, you read a book that big, me personally, I'm probably coming out of there and being like, well, I remember the last story that I read and like bits and pieces here and there. But that's the author in you.
Mm.
Like you're good at reading, retaining, and obviously writing on your own. Like that's a skill that you have.
Yeah, but I don't even know. I mean, I don't feel like I really nailed that retention right there. I was just ripping off the top of my head
Yeah.
in things that I remember reading.
What
No.
was the question again? It was something about perfection.
Yeah, I loved your answer. I thought it was beautiful. Oh, wow. I got on this thing. I'm not even on the question anymore.
It was.
I really thought it was beautiful. Why do we strive for perfection if it is not attainable? Why do we strive for perfection if it is not attainable?
Well, that's why we strive for perfection. Strive for the correct perfection. Don't strive for society's perfection. Strive to be like Jesus.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that. That's why I thought of that, and that analogy of the material and the spiritual. I think that I mean, this is what I wrote about in my last book, but I don't know, I could definitely have written it better and understood it better, but I didn't know what I knew now, which goes back to the first thing about knowing and understanding. I just wasn't there yet, but I wrote with the information that I had awareness towards at the moment. So it is what it is. But the way that I feel like, and I should be hopefully pretty short with this, but the way that I understand it is you play characters and it's based off of your own experience. And in order to play them as close to perfection as possible, it's like a checkpoint deeper into your soul, which would be the perfection of the energy of God. So if we don't get to experience Jesus in real time, like sitting across from me, like the book says that happened a couple thousand years ago, well, I'm believing in the truth that energy of God can exist on planet Earth, and there is a form of perfection that exists, and therefore I'm going to follow that path as narrowly and obedient as I possibly can with the information of the awareness of the character that I have at this current time. See what I'm saying? So it's like my ability to mature and have an understanding to knowledge is, that's why I didn't like that question originally, the last one, because it's like I can't really understand the thing until I experience the knowledge. So I get knowledge of the Bible, or I get the commandments, but then I kind of got to go like play in this world to like test them. Like you got to, like lust and love is a beautiful aspect, like pleasure, like sexual energy for that instance. Lust is such a journey. I can't speak for the female, but for the male ego, lust and surface level lust and pleasure and chasing that and the appeal of getting more attention from the female species, that drives so much of the stages of puberty and human development and awareness and all those things. And it's like, well, of course, once you really grasp the concept of genuinely loving somebody, it makes a lot of sense to just like not do the other thing. But in order to understand that, how do you get out of that tree of, unless you know the information, you know the knowledge, and you have the experiences. And it's like when you come to grips of love for yourself, having the ability to love somebody else, and maintaining a different level of relationship over something that's lustful and pleasureful, it's like you acquire that on your own scale. And I think that's the reason why you strive for perfection. It doesn't have to be lust. I was just using one of the concepts of the, they talk about adultery a lot in the Bible, and there's obviously a lot of stuff around lust in those situations. But just in general, I would imagine the reasoning to strive for perfection is that striving for perfection will extract the most out of you regularly in the current like journey that you're on to gain the knowledge needed from this current character that you're playing in order to understand more of what perfection even is. And I think that's what maturity is. Like, is maturity, it goes back to education. Now I'm going long, but it's like,
Yeah, I remember.
it's like maturity. We talked about education on a surface level and a depth level. Maturity on a surface level is very comically placed in getting a job, getting married, having your shit together,
Typing on a computer, sitting at a
doing
desk,
the bit, having the kids,
shaking
making sure,
hands, kissing
make
babies.
sure the 401k is good. Did you invest this month? Like that's maturity in America. And I'm almost got my pension. I just got to keep on going,
Apple stock's really been doing well.
Did you check the Twitter today and see, it's the whole bit. So, and you're right, you have the knowledge because you're mature. So that's mature on a surface level, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think the depth of maturity would have to be your walk in perfection and your walk to God.
Boom.
Did we get there?
That was, put a stamp on that. That was fantastic.
Hang out more often, man.
Yeah, let's hang out more. Let's do this more often.
Hey,
that was
so
great.
a little shout out. We didn't do it on the pod. That'll come out later. You and I did a pod earlier today as well. But Bauer Hour, what do you got for us? We're both repping it.
We're
give a shout out for
doing all the things. What do you mean? Give a shout out to what?
Bauer Hour.
Bauer Hour is it's my company.
It's one of my favorite brands.
Bauer Hour is a brand based off of inclusivity that focuses on interesting people, and it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, and it highlights the average Joe and shows that we're all interesting and unique in our own way. You just have to be willing to lend a listening ear and ask a couple good questions.
That's beautiful. You want to say anything to the Marks before we leave?
Hey, thanks for being here, Marts.
Cheers, Marks. Love you guys.